Hey everyone and welcome. This is the second set of videos I'm going to put together to help you understand how to dive into the RTEM Hackathon through its API and try to get you started on how to explore the data set. So this is the Kaggle data page that we put together with, it's kind of a directory of the different notebooks and some example data that is useful for you. So if you saw part one last time, there was a notebook that I went through and it has 3 YouTube videos that you can find. Part 2 here is the one that I'm going to talk about today, and then we have part 3 and 4, which will come up in future video releases. So to find also those notebooks they have here in this code portion of the data set, there's also a discussion board. So if anyone wants to ask questions or post things that'll help others understand the data set, please do. And of course, you can learn about the metadata here. So let's go back to part 2. So this metadata and point exploration. If you were to click on this, what you're going to see is is the notebook itself outlined here. You can, if you have an account, which I hope you do by now, you can copy and edit this notebook. And we're going to go through this in the this video and the upcoming videos to kind of show you how to navigate this notebook, which you can do on your own as well and follow along on your own through a copy and edited notebook. So this is what that notebook looks like. First thing, of course, is to install the onboard client library and to install the RTEM client itself. That's pretty fast. Well, just like last time, we have to get the API key. So you'll see that, of course, you can copy and paste your API key there, or you can go to add-ons, go to secrets, and you can put in the API key, which is what I've done, which allows you to authenticate the client secretly. So here you can see this is actually the REST API authentication key that I've been using. So what we're going to do today is the first thing you should always do when you start approaching a data set is to do some exploratory data analysis. And we're going to be looking at the metadata of the points in this video or this set of videos. There are different kinds of classes, equipment points, measurements, location, relationships, which you can learn more about the Onboard API and how to query these. We're going to go through each of these, and then we're going to look at a high-level exploration of the metadata or the point list as it is for the hackathon itself. So the first thing we'll look at is equipment. Equipment is a type of unit, let's say, inside of a building. So you have air conditioning systems, lighting, heating, ventilation, all these different things. And a piece of equipment would be something like a VAV box or an air handling unit. So the first thing we'll do is use the API to query the different equipment types that are in this data set. So here we've used get equipment types. We've converted that into a pandas data frame, and we've looked at the first 5 types: AHU, boiler, chilled water plant, chiller, condenser. And we also, want to look, that's just the first. We're using .head to look at that. There's actually 39 different types of equipment, but up here when we look at the first 5 rows, you can see the different columns that you have for equipment types, but there are 39 types of equipment. There's also subtypes, so you might have certain types of air handling units, or certain types of VAV boxes or boilers or chillers or things like that. So for example, for fans, if you want to look at the subtypes for fan, you have things like exhaust fan, relief fan, return fan, supply fan, booster fan, cooling tower fan. So you have different kinds. So you have kind of this hierarchy of types of equipment. So if we want to get a whole dictionary of this, this is the way you can create a data frame to query fan, get the subtypes, use the .item function to get your whole list of subtypes specifically for fans. So this gets you started, and I just looked at one part of the equipment data set. You can dive into other types of equipment to get this kind of mind map of what are the different types of equipment that you have in this data set. Now let's look at data points. So a data point is a something that is usually affiliated with a piece of equipment. It is usually something that has a time series data stream attached to it. So, there are different points that are out there that have time series attached to them. They would have a certain type, which would be used to indicate what that point is actually measuring. So here, if we get all the point types, we can see that there are 645 different types of points in the hackathon. Here we're looking at the first 5 rows and the last 5 rows. You can see that each point type has these metadata: tag name, display name, whether it's active, that's measurement ID, tag set IDs, tags, and then default unit ID. So we'll break this down a little bit. We'll kind of unpack this in a little bit of how you can utilize that to understand what's in the data set. So you might see this column here called tags. There is a method to the madness in terms of labeling tags. There's something called Haystack, which is a metadata tagging schema, in a sense, that standardizes the types of labels that you would use for point types. There's also, you can see another type of schema called Brick, which is in here as well. So out of all the different tag types that you have, there are 243 different tags that can be used for these points. Some of them from Haystack, some from Brick, some from Onboard themselves have created their own tags that were not available in the other schemas. So using your equipment, using your metadata tags, you can actually get data from a specific building and dive into that data. So let's go ahead and do that. So just like last time, we're going to use the get all buildings function to get this whole list of 229 buildings. This is all the different types of information you get from the buildings, including when they start and stop, when they were built, where they're, which country they're from, which city they're from, time zones, things like that. That's a lot of columns. So you could take the first 10 rows of that and the first 10 buildings, let's say, and you could visualize them in this way. So each column becomes a building. So we're using the .t for transpose. So we're kind of swapping the row names and the column names to get a better idea of what the buildings are. So before we dive into the next part, I'll put that in the next video to keep these videos kind of not too long, where we're going to dive into querying data points. So we've covered equipment, we've covered point types, we've covered the metadata exploration of the buildings again. Next video, let's look at querying some data.